What's up, everyone? I'm sitting here talking to Liquid TLO, the one and only, the famous German Starcraft player. Before we dive in, guys, thank you so much to Esports Heaven. If you're not watching on esportsheaven.com, then you should go check out the article link there. There will be a little bit of a preamble, and all of your timestamps for the interview are going to be there. If you want the MP3 files for this piece, then you can find that on my Patreon. Go check out the Patreon. Tell me what you think. TLO, with all that aside, thank you so much for giving me the time to sit here and talk. How are you doing today, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm good. I'm quite happy because it's been raining like crazy the past days. So now my nose is very clear because I have allergies and now I can actually breathe. So I'm very happy.
How bad is allergy season in Germany? Like, I've never really thought about it. You've got a lot of pretty, not tropical weather, but you got a lot of warm weather. If you're allergic to pollen or something, that must be a particularly bad time, right?
Well, I mean, depends how allergic you are, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Especially nowadays. It's just, it goes from spring to summer and everything blooms at once these days, so it's pretty tough. But now it's good.
Brutal. Well, I'm glad to hear that the rain kind of helped out a little bit. I don't have allergy meds just today. Today I just ran out, so hopefully I won't be sneezing.
One of us.
yeah, that solidarity, allergy users unite. Yeah. So let's jump in. Let's get a little esports talk on the go. I want to start out like way back in the past now. You were a professional Supreme Commander player before you came to SC2. Alongside your brother, you were one of the most successful players in the Subcom scene, starting the first sponsored clan, Subcon Live. What made Supreme Commander a compelling game for you? Why not play one of the bigger titles in RTS like Warcraft or even Command and Conquer?
Right. Well, so Supreme Commander is very hardcore. It's I would say even more hardcore than Starcraft. And I always like games that are difficult and have a lot of depth. Subcom literally has infinite skill cap, basically. Because every unit every shot of a unit is actually physically simulated, right? So if you have like a tank with a gun that is like 3 meters high and just shoots forward, if there's like something in front of it, between it and the target, it will just hit the hill that is between it. And if there's an artillery, it can go over and stuff, right? So theoretically, you could dodge every single shot of every single unit if you microed correctly. But obviously that's impossible because you're going to have hundreds of units, so you're not going to be able to micro everything. But in the early game, you had a lot of cool micro going on like that, and it was just like the skill cap of Subcom was insane. Unfortunately, the problem of Subcom was it was kind of ahead of its time. So even nowadays, it would be very hard to have a computer that can actually run Supreme Commander at good FPS. Back in the days, like the longer the game became, the slower the game was running because it had to slow down to be able to still be simulated. So that was unfortunate, but the game itself was really, really cool and beautiful.
Supreme Commander was one of those games, like when I was a kid, I would like read PC Gamer or Xbox Magazine because like I didn't have a computer that could play games. I played Age of Empires, is the ones that I played, and I'd like look at all the tech units, and it just seemed to be like such a beautifully crafted world with all of the sci-fi that was going on. And you played the Aeon Illuminate faction of kind of like religious laser space folk.
Yeah,
I would say similar in some ways to.
At first, I also race switched in Subcom.
Oh really?
Yeah. Later, I played UEF, which is more like Terran. But yeah, I started as Eon, which is I guess a bit similar to Protoss. Like in Starcraft, it would be the most similar. But they were like more like religious fanatics, basically worshipping an older race that then later came back to kill everybody. But yeah, it was a little bit like the Tal'Darim and the what they're called, Sanaga, I guess. There were some similarities there.
So what made the UEF, which is kind of like more Terran, like you said, and the Aeon, what made those two factions compelling for you? Why did you pick them? Just the lore?
So no, I don't really care about lore when I'm playing, to be honest. So Eon, I started playing because they had a lot of very low health, high range class cannons, and I like that style. But UEF, I think I switched to UEF because they had the cooler artilleries. So what I like to do is I like to do artillery drops, which was like one of my signature moves, which is it was a little bit something not a lot of people did, but I liked it because you could destroy the enemy energy supply very quickly with that, which was one of the important resources. And UEF had extremely front-loaded artillery, which means in Subcom we talked a lot about a unit being front-loaded or more like sustained damage. So in Starcraft, most units shoot relatively fast, have a low cooldown between their attacks. A front-loaded unit would be something like a siege tank or a disruptor, which means it has a low rate of fire. But the cool thing about it is, if you think about it, when a fight starts, when a tank shoots immediately, right? And then it only takes one cooldown until it has shot twice. So when a fight is short, a front-loaded unit is actually much stronger than its DPS would suggest, right? Because after one cooldown, you had 2 shots. So you do twice the DPS basically within the first cooldown. And in Supreme Commander, that was much more important because there were more units that had extremely low rate of fire. And UAF artillery was very front-loaded, which meant you could drop it, immediately destroy stuff, and then pick them up again and go somewhere else. And I think that was one of the main reasons why I switched. But honestly, it's a very long time ago, so it's like hard for me to remember the exact reasons.
So you talk a bit about playing the UEF in a non-traditional way. In StarCraft 2, of course, you have this... I won't call it persona. There's a word that just escapes me. That this... People look at you as a very creative player in the build orders that you perform and in the way that you play the game in StarCraft 2. Did you have a similar kind of portrayal of yourself in Supreme Commander? Did the community look at you in a similar way?
Yeah, I think that's when the meme started already, to be honest. Yeah, it was already in 2007 that people were like, he plays different than everybody else. And I did a little bit, like here and there. Obviously, I was always trying to also be a macro player, kind of like on StarCraft, but I definitely did a lot of weird stuff in Subcom too, sometimes with success, sometimes with not so much success.
What was the Subcom esports community like? This is in the late 2000s, like 2007. Days before esports really started to enter the mainstream to the degree that it is now, or even 5 years ago. Like, what was the esports community like back then, and how much have things changed?
Well, it was very small, obviously. I think we used to have streams on a website called Quad V or something. And back Acebag and Damon were casting Supreme Commander back then, but it was like very low quality. The audio had all kinds of problems, all kinds of lag issues. But the community was very tightly knit. Subcom was not a big game anyway. I think at most we had like 2,000 people at the same time online. It would be in the term of like some people a very dead game, even back then. Even when it was very much alive. But it was cool. We just all knew each other. And we just we loved the game. It didn't matter if it was a small game. The game was just enjoyable for us. And esport was it was a competitive scene. I don't even know if we would call ourselves an esport back then, but it was very competitive. It had a small player base, but people were really good. The average skill of that game would be much higher than of a bigger game because it attracted the kind of people that played hardcore RTS. And there were also people playing Total Annihilation, which was basically the predecessor of Subcom. And it had people that have been playing that game for like ages, before I was like born almost. So people were very good.
Let's pretend that Supreme Commander 3 is announced and they want to try and esports it a little bit. Would you go back and play like the new title if that was a thing? Would you try and be competitive the way that you were? Or would you continue down the StarCraft Blizzard RTS route?
So it sounds very opportunistic, but I think I'll always play the biggest RTS with the biggest scene, as long as I enjoy the RTS, So it might be that I like another RTS a little bit more, but it has a smaller scene. Then I'd probably stick with the one that is bigger, because you will have first of all, it does have financial reasons, of course. It's easier to make money in a bigger game and easier to live off the game and actually be able to do this. But also, usually the bigger scene is the most competitive scene, right? And that's the most appealing thing about me, about playing games for me, is being competitive. So I'm gonna go where the most competitive scene is. As long as I don't completely hate it, you know. If Warcraft 4 comes out and I just think it's terrible, even if it has a big scene, I'm probably not gonna play it. But as long as I enjoy it, I will.
You said that meeting Nazgul, Liquid Nazgul, as a spectator at the age of 12 sparked your esports dream. Talk to me a bit about that experience, and how did meeting Nazgul really set in motion the path that you took in life?
So it was Gamescom 2002, I guess, probably. That's when I was 12. Well, it could also be 3, because, yeah, I think it's before July. It doesn't matter. Like in 2002 or 2003. It was my first event. It was not an esport event as such. It was a gaming convention, right? Gamescom in Leipzig, which is now Gamescom in Cologne. But back then it used to be in my hometown. And obviously you had all those new games and exhibitions and all the crazy booths and stuff. But I didn't care so much about that. For me, the most important thing was Giga, which was part of a German television channel, like a music channel, but they also had like a gaming section or a channel, I think. And they had a Starcraft tournament happening. It was qualifications for the WCG, I guess. I think it was a Germany qualification for WCG. And also the team Nazgul represented, which was just called PG, Pro Gaming. Very simple days back then. They had a booth there, and they were playing exhibition matches against visitors. And I was so lucky to manage to play a couple of those. And I played against Nazgul, but Nazgul was like really good back then, like a proper pro. And I got completely wrecked. He off-raced, and it wasn't even close. But I managed to play against a couple of his teammates. And there was one teammate called Cope that I actually 3-0'd, which obviously felt great. That was like my first esports success in a way. It was very funny because he started like not taking me seriously. So the first match he played one-handed off race, and I proxy gated him, and I crushed him. The second game he plays off race. He played Zerg. He played Terran main race, but off race is Zerg in Brood War. And I proxy gated him again. I won again. And then the third game, he played his main race, and I played a DT rush, but with really insane micro. And I beat him again, and he wasn't happy at all. But the team, they actually found me later, and they gave me a jersey of the team with all the signatures. And they even put like a text on it saying like one day even a little one can become a big one day, which by the way has nothing to do with my ID that actually occurred later. Like when I started playing Starcraft and I like started thinking about the story, I already had the nickname TLO from Supreme Commander, because I played with my brother. He was TBO, I was TLO, the big one, the little one, playing as brothers. And then I started playing Starcraft, and I found that old jersey, and it had that text and was just fitting so well. But it's not where I got my name from. It just was a huge coincidence. So I was treated like very nicely by those people, and I had my first like small success, even if it was kind of meaningless. But yeah, that's what sparked like the real passion, I guess.
That is actually like incredibly perfect. I mean, for the text on the shirt to say even a little one can become a big one too. Like
yeah, that... I mean, it was a German, but yeah.
but when are you selling the rights to this story? When's the Hollywood adaptation? When's the anime come in? When's the book, the comic book? When is it happening? That's insane. That's a perfect story. That's some real legendary stuff.
For the perfect story, I think I still need something more than what I've achieved, you know.
The story's not over yet, man.
It's not over yet. It needs the happy ending, you know? Then maybe we can think about it.
For sure, yeah. So from meeting Nazgul back then, I mean, obviously you're on Team Liquid now. When did the paths cross once more, and what was that like?
So in the Starcraft 2 beta, I started just laddering, right? And I just ran into Nazgul in ladder quite a bit, and he had a really strange playstyle. I had a kind of weird playstyle, and we just got talking after ladder games or in ladder games, like about the game, and we started playing custom games. I remember I helped him prepare some Immortal All-ins on Scrub Station, and yeah, we just became practice partners. And then he realized I'm not a bad player, and he invited me to the Team Liquid Invitational of the beta. And I made second place, I think. I beat Nazgul in the tournament, actually. I kicked him out in the quarterfinals, I think. And then I did lose to Vidra in the finals. But after the tournament, he invited me to Team Liquid if I want to join Team Liquid, basically. And I said yes after a little bit of thinking about it and already having other team offers that actually offered a little bit of money. But TL didn't offer money yet, but it was still... I still picked TL because it just made more sense to me. Like, rather than getting like 200, it wasn't a lot of money offered. Like, I think the highest offer I got then was like 200 euros a month and like a 1-year contract. So I was like, rather join Team Liquid, because I already felt like, first of all, Team Liquid is like a name, and it's like prestige, and I know Team Liquid, you know, I've been a huge fan of the website and everything for ages. So I thought it makes much more sense for me to join something that I love, that I also feel like has much more potential to grow, which it obviously did, than join some other team for like a year contract for like insignificant amount of money.
So you said you kind of had to think about joining TL in the beta days. Was esports always your intended career path since that first day at Gamescom when you were 12? Or was there any point where you thought you were going into some different path and then Starcraft came along and swooped you out of that?
I didn't really... I think it's the same for most pro gamers, for most gamers. I didn't really have, you know, a plan, to be honest. Like, it's just... Like, obviously, esports was a dream, but it's none that I specifically pursued until Starcraft 2 was announced. When Starcraft 2 was announced, I started practicing Brood War basically full time. And I think it was after school, so I wasn't in university yet. And then when I was in university, I didn't do much for it. So I realized practicing Brood War is going to prepare me for Starcraft 2. It's going to be similar enough that the skills are going to carry over. So the year before Starcraft 2, I like really focused on it and tried to make it a thing, because I felt like with a new game, if I'm really in there from the very start, I have very good chances to be one of the best. That's how I felt. So once Starcraft 2 was like finalized, okay, it's going to be released at this day. Yes, I took that path. But before that, I didn't think all the time, oh, I'm going to become a pro gamer. I thought I want to become a pro gamer, maybe someday, but it wasn't like my main focus.
You're a figure who is almost universally loved in the community. You have an air of positivity around you, it seems, and things like the Doctors Without Borders charity stream did a lot to endear you to the community, or endear the community to you, perhaps. You were so loved on our Starcraft at points that you've become a bit of a running joke on our Starcraft Circle Jerk. How do you see your own image in the community, and what brought you to that place?
So I was often not comfortable with how people saw me, because I felt for a long time people put me on a pedestal, and I did have quite the decline after I got my carpal tunnel and I didn't have results, and I got honestly quite depressed, and I was in a very dark spot in my mind. But to the outside, I needed to keep maintaining that positive image that people expected from me. So while I appreciated what people were trying to do, sometimes it was a burden. It's not a burden nowadays anymore, because first of all, I think everybody's way more shaded, which I think is a good thing. And nowadays, like, people are much more realistic. We've all grown up. like the players have grown up, but also the community has grown up. So people don't have crazy, like they don't put players as much on pedestals anymore. But back in the days, it troubled me a lot because I felt like I couldn't live up to the expectations people had. And I actually really liked Starcraft Circle Jerk because like they got it, like they understood this is just it's just a projection, right? It's not who I am really. It was just that's the meme basically. And I embraced Starcraft Circle Jerk at I think in like 2013 or something, or something like that. When I started getting over my own ego, I used to make a lot of those blogs when I was like, I'm gonna get better and I'm gonna fix my life and I'm gonna win a tournament next year, blah blah blah, like kind of cringy stuff that I'm not proud of reading nowadays. But back then I thought it was my honest opinion, or it's how I felt. But Starcraft Circle Jerk basically made a meme out of me someday or like soon winning the tournament, and that I'm actually so good, but I just couldn't show my full potential yet. So then I think on New Year's I made a post on Starcraft Circle Jerk where I just myself said, next year I'm definitely going to win the tournament, and that was just my post. And then Starcraft Circle Jerk, like they completely embraced me and I embraced them. It was a great moment. And at that point I liked for a while I liked Starcraft Circle Jerk a lot more than Starcraft.
You're obviously a member of a really big esports organization. Team Liquid has rosters in, I think, pretty much every game that one could want a roster in. Do you ever talk to some of your teammates from the other squads who are maybe younger in esports, coming up and possibly experiencing the same thing that you had back then?
To be honest, not really. Starcraft is kind of its own thing. There's a few people that I run into at events and a few people that I communicate a little bit with, like Ken from the Smash scene, because he's also a Starcraft fan. So, and he played Starcraft and was like High Master or Grandmaster even. And I've run into Hungrybox a couple of times also from Smash that we talked a bit, but everybody is kind of their own scene, you know. I must admit, I really don't care much about other esport. I'm a little bit of a Dota fan here and there. I would watch the international, but I also don't really know the Dota players. It's just every team for themselves, except a few personal exceptions, I guess.
Right on.
You know, Starcraft is already enough work.
For sure. In an interview with Richard Lewis from Cadrid in 2012, you said that joining Team Liquid was a dream come true, but that you didn't feel as if you'd been living up to that dream. You kind of just touched on it, you know. You said, quote, at the time, inside of my head, I feel like I'm a disappointment to Team Liquid. How did you reconcile those feelings? Did you ever talk to anyone in the organization about that? Do you have similar feelings now, ever, as you're still a competitor on the same team?
First of all, I don't have similar feelings anymore, because I feel like back in the days I was like a lot more emotional and in good ways and in bad ways maybe. I don't think I am a disappointment, because I think I'm very valuable to Team Liquid, and I have over the years definitely, you know, done my share of work. Of course I'd be happier if I had bigger results, but I definitely think I'm a net positive for Team Liquid, and I'm definitely not a disappointment. I don't know, I just got older, and I've always fulfilled like all my duties and probably went a little bit above the duties that I needed to do as a player. Like nowadays I'm taking care more of the other players as well. I'm doing a little bit of management, and I was always, if something needed to be done, I was always the guy that maybe wouldn't take a step forward and volunteer, but I was the guy that was too stupid to take a step backwards, and then I was like kind of always in the front, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do this sponsor segment, or like I'm gonna fly there and do this work that needs to be done, you know. So not just outside of also like outside of my play, I always did what I could for TL. And you, like, as a player as well, I think I have brought, you know, things to TL. You know, maybe not a championship yet, but definitely results. and people enjoy my play, and there's plenty of fans. So I think I definitely have a justified position in TL anyway.
Definitely, without doubt. You said for a second there that you've kind of been helping out with the management of your teammates a little bit. Talk about that a little bit more. What does that entail? What have you been doing?
Well, it's just a lot of chores that needs to be done for the team. Like TL is pretty professional about how things are set up, so things are being made relatively easy. Like, for example, when social media needs to be updated, we all have access to drop boxes and stuff. And I'm basically nowadays a guy that needs to make sure all the players have everything updated. I look at travel for them. And by the way, the Starcraft team is always the fastest to have everything in order. So I'm very proud of that. Yeah, I look at travel when players need new gear that goes through me, or a lot of times also when somebody has problems, people usually feel open to talk to me about it, and I try to help. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But just listening to people when they have problems and trying to fix their, just make other players' lives as easy as possible, and always try to take responsibility that everything is good for them. If somebody needs something at an event, I try to take care of it, etc. Like pretty basic stuff, but it adds up.
You spent some time in the past in Korea to train. In 2010, you went to the OGS Team Liquid House, and then again in 2012, you went to the Team Liquid House of Awesome. With the base trade house there now functioning as a gathering point for foreign StarCraft players in Korea, would you ever consider returning to Korea to practice and train?
I would probably do it if the opportunity is right. The main issue is as you get older, you kind of get more and more responsibilities in your life. And I think for me right now, it would be kind of hard to go to Korea for too long. Actually, maybe next year would be easier, because then my best mate is moving, and then I don't have the dog here anymore. I don't have Higgins here anymore. So that makes it easier, because right now I'm taking care of a dog. So that makes it hard going to Korea for a long time. But I definitely like to, but I'm not sure if I would like to live in a pro gaming house. I think if I would go, I would hit up Chinro, that I'm still friends with, and live with him, because I've made not the most positive experiences living with other pro gamers sometimes, because I can sometimes not be very happy when things aren't in order. And I'm usually, as I said, I'm the guy that ends up being the idiot that takes care of stuff. And that would maybe mean that I have too many duties that I wouldn't want to actually have in order for me to be happy. If things are not clean, even though I heard good things about the base trade house, but pro gamers can still be exhausting to live with sometimes. Like, at least if it has to be a long period of time. And I like most pro gamers, I like most StarCraft players, but I think with most of them, I wouldn't want to live for a long time.
I can see that. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Even though StarCraft players, again, they are like the least waste men out of the pro gamers. Like, they are pretty functional human beings, but I have pretty high standards when it comes to that.
I might get your permission to make the article headline. TLO, quote, StarCraft players are pretty functional human beings, end quote.
That's okay. That's fine with me.
We might have to do that. That's a pretty good quote. This is kind of tying into everything that you just kind of touched on, speaking about pro gamers and speaking about living with pro gamers and everything like that. This is a question that I had a conversation with Fear Dragon about the other day, and he said this is one of his favorite things to see. What's your best story about one of your teammates?
There's a lot of stories that I don't think I can talk about. Those are the best stories, you know? If you ask that question, the best stories are those that can never be told.
What's the best PG-13 story about your teammates?
Are there any? Those questions are always so hard, you know? You look back at all the years, and then it's hard to come up with a particular singular story. For me, actually, the best story in a way is Jinro, because when I first met him in Korea, he was like the nerdiest, like helpless person I've ever met in my life. And I think thanks to like Starcraft and esport, he's like grown up into like a proper person, like that made his own life. He stayed in Korea ever since we moved in 2010, and he has a girlfriend there and made his like actually properly learned Korean, and has been living there for 7 years, and is doing his thing, learning MMA, and still lives there. And I just find it cool that thanks to StarCraft, he basically has a life that is very unlikely, Like without StarCraft, there's no chance that he would have ever moved to Korea, learned the language, settled down in a country that is completely different from Sweden, and stayed there for 7 years. And I think that's remarkable that he actually did it, and actually did his thing and succeeded. Because when I met him in the first time, he was completely useless. But now he figured it out, and that's thanks to the StarCraft. I think without it, I think there's a lot of cases where like StarCraft players came out of their shell thanks to StarCraft, and would have stayed very introverted, very cliche gamers if they wouldn't have become pro gamers.
You said that when you first met Jinro, he was completely useless. Is there any specific comedic story about Jinro being completely useless, perhaps?
He was just so clumsy, and he'd be the kind of guy that if you wouldn't take him by the hand, he would just get lost, and like he basically needed to call his parents and pick him up from the aisle again. Yeah, but. StarCraft gave him confidence and made him grow up. So that's cool.
In 2014, with Hotbit, you said that the North American StarCraft 2 scene has, quote, no hope, end quote, compared to EU, because Europe has more depth, where NA has only a few players who are amazing. There's not as much depth. Somehow, though, NA developed into an incredibly strong region only 3 years later, here in 2017. Last year, we had Neeb carrying the foreign flag to success, while players like Kelazur and Major this year are seriously stepping up and making some really great runs in tournaments. When do you think that shift happened for North American StarCraft, or do you still see it as a region that is very top-heavy? And what are your thoughts when it comes to NA versus EU now?
I don't think it shifted. I think it's still extremely top heavy. Like NA has incredibly good top players. They're, let's say, what are like the top 5 is like Kelazur, Major, Neeb, Scarlet. Who else? Cham is pretty good nowadays. But then there's a couple more that are decent, like that are like not terrible, that can definitely compete with a lot of good European players. But Europe, I feel, has like 30 good players, and NA is very top heavy. But the top of NA is incredibly good. Like there's no denying to that. But they also trained a lot in Europe, so I feel like that's kind of the issue. Like because Europe was more competitive, all the good NA players either went to Korea or were training on the EU server, and that made it even more top heavy. But the top is excellent that NA has. But if you look like playing on NA ladder, it's kind of depressing as somebody coming from Europe. Like the top 50 GM is just, it's not very good. And people don't try to play properly. That's one of the main issues. NA, there's a lot of NA players that just have garbage styles that are good in their own skill bracket, but that can never evolve into anything better. That's the main issue I see with NA. Like the top players, obviously, they get it. They play proper StarCraft. They learn transitions. But a lot of the NA players, they are one-trick ponies that try, abominations of creativity out themselves, and want to find their own style a little bit too much. And they are very cheesy. They don't learn too much about how to play StarCraft that goes beyond the first 8 minutes. And then, there's lots of personalities in NA, though. So that's something.
I think...
But like as I said, like the top players are... Like, I'm not going to diss on the legitimate NA players. They're very good.
What are your personal goals for yourself in tournaments? What are your goals for 2017 overall? And now that we're at the halfway point through the year, do you feel as if you're accomplishing those goals?
Well, I guess my main goal needs to be to finally beat Neep. It's been pretty unfortunate that out of like we don't have that many events this year, and two of the events I lost 4 times against Neep. And that's just very unlucky. So I need to destroy Neep. I'm working on my PVC in particular to be able to accomplish that. Or maybe at Valencia, I'm not going to run into him. But yeah, finally breaking through a round of 8 and making it a round of 4 again. That's my main goal. Obviously, I want to qualify for BlizzCon, but it's going to be pretty hard at this point. So though it's possible to the very end, right? But yeah, Valencia is very, very important for me to have a good showing. To get a round of 4 at least is almost a must at this point.
This is kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy stuff, but what do you think your chances are of getting that round of 4 come Valencia?
I mean, it's so hard to predict StarCraft events. It depends a lot on the bracket, but I think I have pretty realistic chances as long as I don't lose twice against Neep again. You know, it's I just wanted to be able to show that I can actually compete with a lot of the best players, and I lost to Neep in very close series as well. So hopefully I'll be a little bit more lucky at Valencia. That's all I hope for. And I think as long as that's okay, as long as I have a little bit luck, I think I can have a good result.
Tell me a little bit about the pro gaming relationship that you have with Neeb. Would you consider a TLO versus Neeb match to be a rivalry match at this point? And do you ever talk to the guy like outside of the booth? Have you ever talked about your matches with him?
Neeb is a very reverse guy, very introverted, so I don't know him too well. He's one of the mystery men of StarCraft. I would call it, from my perspective, I would call it a rivalry at this point. Like, not a personal one, but a professional one, basically. But I don't think he'd share that sentiment.
Does that grate at you at all? Like that idea that maybe he doesn't see you on the same level, even though you had close games and close series? Does that kind of drive you to do better, or is that a little discouraging, maybe?
I don't really care. Like, I feel I've been playing that long now, and also I'm much older than Neep, so it would feel very petty to be like, this young kid is not taking me seriously, even though like I'm close to his skill, but he always beats me and he also has better results, you know. It would just be ridiculous of me to think in that way, I think. So for me, it's all fine.
You have one of the most successful StarCraft 2 streams on Twitch. You stream very often. Even just last week there, you were streaming, but you were streaming your practice games, like you were trying to focus really hard and you didn't have face cam up, it was just APM cam. What is it that you enjoy about streaming, and why is it so important for you to maintain that connection to your audience?
So the coolest thing is for me that there are so many people that have been watching my stream for so long. I have a bunch of my subscribers have hit over 50 months of subscriptions by now, which is, I think, pretty rare on Twitch to have somebody who's subscribed for over 4 years now, because the subscription option also wasn't around and available for most people. Not since like 6 or 7 years, but more like 4 or 5 years. And just recognizing the names from people that have been watching since 2011, 2010, 2012, and that it's still the same people that enjoy StarCraft. I like that a lot. I feel like I'm very intimate with my Twitch chat. Obviously, I don't know everybody, but I know a good amount. And it's kind of cool to just, you know, show StarCraft. And when you have a good day, it's great. When you're feeling good, when you're winning a lot, it's very enjoyable, but it's very hard when you're having a hard time. It kind of amplifies your mood, and mood is already something that gets amplified in general as a StarCraft player, because winning feels amazing, losing kind of sucks, and streaming makes it even more extreme, which means you can have an amazing time with streaming, but it can also be a burden, but most of the time it's good.
Do you think that if you were to not stream at all, if you were to just leave the stream behind and do 100% pure off-stream practice, how would that affect your results, do you think, and your overall skill level?
I think I'm streaming an amount that is not disruptive. So I usually aim for around 40 hours a month, which is not crazy. And I'm not like a full-time streamer, right? It's not like I stream every day for 6 hours or something. Then I think it has quite a big effect on your skill, maybe on your results. You become predictable. But I think the amount I'm streaming is pretty reasonable.
You spoke a little bit earlier in the interview. You mentioned your carpal tunnel issues. Is that something that you still deal with at all, or is that completely fixed up and you're good to go?
So I still have pain occasionally, especially when I'm doing badly in my life, to say it that way, I guess. So pain can come if I don't take care of myself, and if I have a little bit more of a, you know, negative time that adds up, and then it's very hard to get out of it again when you're already demotivated, and then you're also getting pain and you sleep badly, and then on top of the things you already need to fix, you also need to fix that. Then it kind of sucks. But most of the time, it's not an issue anymore. So I learned to live with it, and in a way, it's a nice indicator of me whether I am living my life properly, because usually it comes when I'm not doing any exercise, when I'm sleeping too much or too little, when I'm too much in front of the PC and don't take enough breaks to stand up, and when I'm not stretching, etc. So it's kind of cool, because it's a like warning signal of me having to fix stuff. So in a way, I kind of made it my partner. I try to see it not just as a negative. I see it as something that can also help me realize I need to change stuff in my life currently.
In recent months, you've been having a fair bit of, I guess I'll call it banter with Avalo on the TL forums and on Twitter. Tell the viewers who may not be aware, like, what sparked the friction between yourself and Avalo?
It's like, so for me, it really doesn't matter that much. Like, I don't really care much about Avalo. I think he cares much more about me than the other way around. But I just, sometimes when somebody is being a bully, I just can't stand it anymore. If nobody stands up to somebody who's being a bully all the time, even though technically, yes, it probably should be best to just ignore them and let them be in their own niche. But sometimes I just can't hold it inside of me anymore. And when I have a bad day and I'm angry already, I just sometimes leash out against bullies. And that's basically it. Somebody that says so many stupid things in a row, every day unchallenged. I think sometimes you gotta challenge it, even though I know it won't change anything. You're not gonna get through to him. But sometimes it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I feel I have to make a completely pointless stand against people like that. I guess that's the main reason.
As a part of the banter with Avalo, I guess he started a balance mod tournament, and you announced that you would do the same with your own balance changes. Tell me a little bit about what you have intended to do with that balance mod and what you think it will accomplish. Why the changes that you have made, why you think they're healthy for StarCraft 2.
So I just try to not do something too severe, but just tone down stuff people hate and try to balance it out a little bit by buffing other stuff. I think StarCraft 2 as it is very good, but I feel a few small tweaks could make it very, very, very good. And that's all I'm trying to accomplish with that. I've been a little bit slow on that. I wanted to do it between DreamHack Summer and Valencia, but then time was a little bit shorter than I thought. So hopefully I'll start my own tournament after Valencia. There's a lot more time after that until Montreal. And yeah, I just think small changes can go a long way in an RTS, because small changes just have a gigantic snowball effect. And I'm just trying to shift things a little bit what I thought would be good for the game by just diversifying things, make things better that aren't too extreme. And for example, adepts and oracles are like one of the main things people hate. AR compositions are something people aren't fond of. So I just try to make small tweaks like that.
So TLO, I take fan questions from Twitter and Team Liquid and my Discord, and sometimes people post on Reddit too. Got a bunch for you here now. Babrox asks, what do you think of the fast balance change approaches since BlizzCon? Do you prefer the faster changes, or would you prefer a longer wait so that a meta and counters can kind of settle?
I don't mind changes in StarCraft 2, especially at this point. I don't feel changes were too fast. Like, we've been on this version for quite a long time now, and the changes we had were quite minor. So I actually wouldn't mind bigger redesigns after BlizzCon. It's kind of like Dota does it, but that would only be good if then Blizzard is okay with reverting changes or doing very fast follow-up changes for things that are completely ridiculous. But I think it would be kind of nice if things get mixed up on a grander scale after BlizzCon than it is now. I wouldn't mind that at all, actually.
That seems like a little bit counterintuitive to what you just said about like the balance mod stuff. Would you...
Right, but
like why is that?
Because I'm first of all, I'm like, I wanted to make a mod that is similar enough that people are actually interested in playing it, and also because this is the current version, right? But what I'm talking is about a post BlizzCon kind of time, where Blizzard, who I think still are obviously a lot more competent than I am, they can do bigger changes than I could as like a programmer that is just doing it on the side. So it's a little bit just in terms of resources and in terms of what I'm capable of doing and what they would be capable of doing. I don't think it contradicts each other completely. Like, I don't mind small changes that can go a long way, but I'm also okay with bigger redesigns after BlizzCon.
Zizla asks, TLO, your career as a Starcraft 2 player has always had peaks that showed incredible potential, such as the early games cast by Husky, way back, I guess, your WCS run in offline play in Korea, qualify for GSL, etc. But like any good soap opera, you've suffered devastating lows and injuries, which has hurt you during your career. Where do you pull your energy from to continue to keep picking yourself up and trying again? And can you tell me any times that resolve has helped you in ways outside of StarCraft 2? That's a really well-written question, by the way.
Yeah, very articulate. I hope I can have a nearly as articulate answer. Difficult. First of all, I think for me it's a lot easier to seem like I have that resolve, first of all, because I have friends and family that give me stability. That helps a lot because, like, the worst thing that can happen to me is that, I don't know, I stop playing StarCraft and I have a period of time where I don't make money, but people will help me out and I have enough savings that I can just switch to something else. So I think that helps a lot to have like financial security in that sense, or a social capital where people will help you if you have a rough time, and always having the support of the people around you. That helped me a lot. But where did my resolve help me otherwise? I guess, I mean, first of all, most of my life is StarCraft. Most of my life is esport. But I just don't easily give up about anything. I don't let myself be put down. Even, I guess the biggest strength I have nowadays is that when I have a really bad time, in the past, bad times lasted very long for me. And it would take me forever to get out of it again until I can become a functional human being again, where I am not just sad and have a bad time, but over the years, and I think that's partly thanks to StarCraft, I realized that you need to fight to get out of a bad phase of your life, and that every bad phase can be overcome because I've overcome it in the past. So why can't I do it again? So now the periods where I feel bad, when I feel bad, are much shorter than in the past, where I would just dwell in my sadness and just kind of give in and be kind of pathetic in my dwelling in my own sadness like a teenager that was just scorned by his love, and now I'm much faster by like getting up again and getting back into my life and fixing things up.
You talk about having the support of the people around you. I want to jump back. I should have asked this question topically, but Whoops. For someone that started wanting like an esports journey at such a young age, what was the reaction from your family when you started to really take those steps into the field?
There was no resistance at all. My brothers were very happy for me. My parents they were just happy I was doing my own thing. They weren't particularly thrilled or afraid of my esport career. But yeah, it was good because I just had support, and no resistance, and everybody was pretty much just happy for me doing the thing I want to do.
That's great.
It was very easy in that regard.
Does your family watch your matches now? Like when you go to Valencia, will they have Twitch on in the living room kind of thing?
My brothers watch, and my parents follow, but they don't really watch my games. But they always hear from my brothers, like if I'm doing well or if I'm doing badly. But
nice.
yeah, mostly my brothers, especially my youngest older brother, watches pretty much all my games.
Nice. It's always good to have that kind of familiar support.
For sure.
Mar asks, what is your process for implementing the creative tricks that you're so known for into your playstyle? And then possible follow-up, what advice would you give to someone who wants to implement more of the creative playstyle into their own playstyle?
That's always such a hard question to answer because I always feel like I give a completely dissatisfying answer to it. But the truth is, a lot of times I just play Starcraft completely brain dead. Completely brain dead. I just don't think about it at all. It's just a lot of times I play purely intuitively without any conscious thought, and then sometimes things just happen, and then my brain, goes into conscious mode, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I should do that once in a while, and wow, I just invented the build order. I didn't realize, but that's a good build order. I should, make that something that I consciously do. But I don't start engineering build orders consciously. They just come to me. I just have a muse, and they just come to me. You can't learn that. I'm sorry. If you want to implement, it's just something you got it or you don't have it. No, but like the main thing is for normal people is not to be afraid to just try things out. I guess that's how it came to me in the past, and then it just became a subconscious process. But the most important thing about making build orders is that you need to understand economy, how economy works. So once you have that, you can start creating your own build orders, but they need to make sense in economy-wise. For example, a build order, an all-in, needs to hit a spike, and obviously at some point you want to stop making workers. But if you stop making workers too early, it might just mean your all-in is weaker, because you could have had more units if you made a few more workers. And kind of just understanding how mineral and gas ratios work and all that is very important to start making build orders. And the more gimmicky build orders you make, the more masterfully you need to understand how economy actually works and what you can transition into, and what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve. But do you need to kill your opponent? Then attacking workers of your opponent is a bad idea, for example, because you want to trade units against units and maybe kill production because you want to finish the game. If you trade away half your army but kill workers, you're probably still going to lose. And kind of general concepts like that need to be understood to create new build orders, I think. Or you can just try out stuff and see what sticks,
Throw some darts at that old dartboard, see what happens.
Yeah. That's an approach that's fine too.
Mr. T asks, do you think being a StarCraft 2 pro takes more hard work or more talent? And which high-level pros play the most and the least? Two-parter.
That's such a complex, that's a question nobody can answer. I feel about talent and hard work. It's always so hard to tell what is a talent. For example, being able to work hard could be a talent itself. So I always feel unable to answer that question, really, because I really don't know what talent is, and how it compares to hard work. And I do think StarCraft requires incredible amounts of hard work, no matter how talented, whatever it is you are, and some gossip about the past about certain players almost not playing at all and still being incredible are a little bit exaggerated. Like every player that is good usually played very good amounts of StarCraft. It's just a matter of if somebody played 7 hours a day or 10 hours. So yeah, I would say hard work is definitely more important in StarCraft, especially than talent itself. It might be different for other games, maybe. And it also depends what you mean by hard work. Like, there might be people who are currently not playing as much, but then they had 3 years in which they were playing so much that basically they obtained skills that they still have, and now they just need to keep the skill rather than, you know, playing 8 hours to raise it more. And it's very hard to answer what counts into hard work, you know. Maybe going to the sauna and going hang out with friends could also count into the hard work if that makes you a better player, because you're more relaxed and you took away stress and suddenly you can think more openly about StarCraft again. There's just so many factors that work into skill that we don't know, like, because it's such a complicated thing where it's just beyond our comprehension, where we can just make guesses, but there's no real science in esports yet that is really following players around and trying to figure out what's going on. So we all just, you know, basically talking out of our asses, like, when it comes to that, to be honest. Like, nobody knows.
And then the second part of that was which pro gamers that you know of play the most and the least. I don't know if that's something that you even want to answer.
I can't even answer that, to be honest. It's very hard to tell. Everybody smurfs, and yeah, I can't answer that. Not because I don't want to, but just because I don't know, to be honest. I would just make up names and then it might not be accurate, and I don't want to do that.
From your very own Team Liquid, Muskius, I hope I'm saying that right, asks...
Musicus, isn't it?
Musicus? It looks like Muskius is how I've written it down, but I might have written it down incorrectly, and if that's the case, then I do apologize. The question is, do you think you're currently playing in your best form in your career so far? And how hard is it to continually improve after such a lengthy career? After 7 years, how do you still improve?
Well, so I'm just looking at my Legolag graph, which is like the meta score of StarCraft, and that's higher than it's ever been. So just by the only thing where I can like have something solid that I can look at, I'm better than ever. But also it's harder than ever. So there's some people that are just so incredible at the moment. So maybe comparatively, I'm not in my best phase, but I think I am anyway. Even if my results don't look like that, but I've been, as I said, also kind of unlucky with running into certain people and being unlucky in tournaments. So I think I'm maybe not today the best, but if you look at the 3 months period, I think I've showed my best play that I have in my career yet. And I think it's easier almost for me to improve after all these years, because as I said, like, I'm a more stable person. I'm just more settled, and I don't have that belief that when you become older, you become worse just because you're older. As long as you keep practicing, it's fine. So I just feel I have a stability that I didn't have when I was younger that helps me improve more easily nowadays than in the past.
Do you ever feel any concern? I mean, like, the part of the thing, right, with StarCraft and with any competitive video game is that it's as much of a trick to keep up with the heightening skill cap as it is to improve yourself, right? Do you ever look at the gameplay that's going around and think, wow, this is like really cutting edge and I need to be able to do this because in a few months maybe it's going to be standard? Is that ever a concern for you?
Not really, no. It's just take it as it comes. But I feel like you almost always automatically grow with the challenge. As long as you have a competitive mindset. If it becomes harder, you become better. That's how I see it. It's the only choice you have. So why think about it? You know, I don't really think about it.
From Twitter, HypeManQ asks, if you had to choose a fellow Team Liquid teammate from any game to have a strongly suggestive fanfic made of, who would it be? This is the real questions now.
Okay, so let me think. I'm gonna throw up the roster. Let's focus on Starcraft. That makes it easier. It's also then people can relate on it. Well, I mean, I'm gonna go with Thermal because his Twitter handle is Mark the Explorer. So that's the perfect title. So we already have that figured out. And once you have the title, the rest is easy, right?
All right, everybody pre-reserve your copies. Also on Twitter, Becky Baby asks, says, I'd like to know how definite a boundary you make between habit and ritual. Do you find superstitions creep into what should be purely logical?
Okay, that's a big question. I mean, I think we all do things that are idiosyncratic, but I don't really have. I don't have any ritual. Like, what's the question again?
The difference between habit and ritual, like things that you would do before a game or before a tournament that don't like actually contribute to your play style or your level of play, but maybe you did it once before a tournament that you did really well in, so you kind of did it the next time and you did it the next time, and it's less about it affecting your play and more about just a thing that is constantly what you do before a big match.
I just don't. That's like, so I don't have anything like that, I think. I mean, there's habits that are definitely good, that I don't think have much to do with rituals that I do. That I have a meal a couple hours before my big match, and I try to bring sugary, snacks with me that I can consume right before my match, and etc. And I try to lower my caffeine consumption a couple of weeks before a tournament, so then that I'm not too reliant on it at the tournament, so that I might run into a caffeine problem or something, or like too big spikes. But I don't have any, anything like a plushie or something that I need to bring with me that, without I can't play or something like that. I just don't have anything like that. For me, those things were always kind of silly. But you do want to feel as much at home at a tournament, like as possible. So, for example, one thing that is big that I always do is, well, obviously, I bring my mouse mat, and I have this gigantic mouse mat. So I always have the same surface on the table, even for my keyboard, not just for the mouse. And that's one of those things. If I don't have that, I would definitely feel bad. But I just guarantee that I have as similar as the situation at the tournament as I have at home. But yeah, there's no rituals that I follow.
Cool. I believe, too, if you want to check out Liquid TLO's home setup, I think there's a sponsored video posted just recently on your Twitter.
Exactly. I put up my Razer gear for you guys to check out, so you can look at my Twitter for that.
# sponsored. Joe Laguidis asks, what allows you to be so absurdly consistent? I'm totally on board with this question. I mean, you might have had your slumps, but you're pretty consistently one of the names who is always making the round of 16, round of 8 kind of thing. You're always a threat in a tournament. What makes you so consistent across so many years?
So, first of all, I don't agree. I think I'm still not as consistent as I should be, even though I'm more consistent nowadays than in the past. But I guess it's just that I've played for so long now. Once you've been doing something for a certain time, and now it's been almost 7 years, or it's been 7 years, at some point you just gain that consistency, that you're not going to completely fuck up anymore, basically, because you've done it so many times. But I still think I could be more consistent than I am.
Fear Dragon asks, what is the most creative thing you've ever done? What is your proudest creation of madness?
I used to have a Ghost Rush in TVT that I invented. Oh, no, actually, yeah, that one is pretty good. I had a Ghost Rush in TVT where I rushed Ghost, and that was back in the days when Snipe did 45 damage and was like a fast spell, not a channeled spell. So I sniped the Marines, and then I would drop a nuke like immediately on their wall and kill the depots, and I would follow up with Marauders. And it was like a ghost Marauder all in. And even with Banshees you could deal, because you would EMP the Banshee to destroy the cloak. And Ghosts actually are pretty decent against Banshees because they're light. So 2 Ghosts could kill a Banshee pretty easily. So that was one of my most creative builds. And then probably more prominent was the way I played against was it Lucera? No. No, yeah, it was Lucera, right? The GSL match in 2010? Yes, yeah, Lucera. Back in those days, I played Terran, and Roaches only had 3 range. So Hellions have 5 range. So I designed a build against Zerg where I rushed factories. Then I took my CVs out of gas, and I just spammed Hellions for a really long time. And I figured out that Hellions back then, because Roaches only had 3 range, not 4, they could actually kite Roaches. So I was fighting Roaches with Hellions, and that transitioned into a really strong economical mech build. And I could do economy damage, but I didn't die to the Roaches. Usually, like, the Roaches were just supposed to kill you, but I just kited them over the entire map until they reached my base. They were all dead, basically. So back then, you could counter Roaches with Hellions. And I was the only one who ever did that. So I guess that's the most mad thing I've ever done that actually worked out and even won me a GSL match.
As a Zerg player myself, and you're a Zerg player too, you must share some of my anger in just hearing about that, because that sounds disgusting.
I mean, I don't have any feelings about that. Like, I'm just happy that I came up with it, and now it can't happen to me anymore, you know? I'm not disgusted. I'm not disgusted with myself, you know? Just smart play. If it happened to me now, I'd respect it, surely.
Do you ever think about switching again to Protoss? Like, that's one of the races that has the most insane builds, and I mean, Haas is one of the most insane players of insane creativity in all of Starcraft, right? What kept you with Zerg?
So I think Zerg has the most flexibility, and that's just it, you know. Protoss can do a lot of crazy all-ins and stuff, but in their more standard play, they're very set, and they have to fulfill a lot of conditions for it to work. So I think they're very static. Once you go down a tech path, you're kind of on that tech path. And a Zerg, you can maneuver more on the map. And Protoss is also very trapped inside their base until they can move out for a long time, and moving out is such a danger. And I like to be active on the map and make plays. I feel like my creativity is not so much from build orders, but more from how I use units. And Zerg allows you to use your units more, so I prefer that.
Duddles asks, if you could choose any one player, who would you like to see join Team Liquid next?
Any one player? That's a good question. Depends if you go for skill or for friendship.
What about one of each?
So Harstem, I think I'd love to have in TL, not for his skill, but for his friendship. Not that Harstem is bad. He beat me in a tournament today as well. And skill-wise, I'd probably want what's the Zerg player I respect the most in Korea? I think I'd like Sue. Yeah, probably gonna go for Sue.
That would be pretty badass.
Yeah, Liquid Sue would not a bad match.
Not a bad match at all. Matt Pikarski, and I hope you got your name right. Matt Pikarski asks, for someone who's been in the scene for such a long period of time, can you identify any overarching trends in the evolution of the metagame?
Oof. That's some PhD level question. So the only trend that I could easily pinpoint is the evolution of macro. That it has a little bit to do with also how the game changed itself, but also players usually become better at defending stuff, and they become more and more flawless. And the more flawless the players, the harder it gets to just win off one base or two base, you know? So basically, first it was one base all-ins, then it evolved into two base all-ins, then the three base became the new two base, and now there's even four base all-ins, you know, kind of. People become better and better at transitioning into later stages of the game and holding and using defender's advantage. Because theoretically in a perfect match, attacking is always suicide because there's always a defender's advantage. But obviously players are not perfect, but they got better at defending and using the defender's advantage. So it became harder and harder to just finish the game with less economy and quickly. So games theoretically become longer and more transitional over time, and I think that's a trend we can see over the years as well.
I want to ask you a little bit about WCS and the current 2017 system that we have. In WCS circuit, there aren't that many events, there aren't that many opportunities for people to earn the points compared to last year. And this is a system that Blizzard says that they're looking to keep roughly the same for 2018. Is that something that you, as a player, are pleased with? Would you make any changes? What kind of changes would you make?
Well, first of all, I think it's good to have consistency. One of the main issues is that WCS changed all the time. And I think that really turned people off because it was very hard to follow what's still going on. The only thing that I would like to see is a couple more opportunities for foreigners and Koreans to play each other. I think that's something, especially nowadays, people are very interested in. For a while, we maybe had too many Koreans at events, which also was maybe not good. But I feel then we went the other way where Koreans and foreigners never meet. I feel there's a middle ground that would make everybody happier. And I'm really looking forward to the Korea versus World event. But I feel like Koreans and foreigners should meet a little bit more often. But I know it's hard to have that many events with StarCraft 2 these days. But if I could just wish that into existence, I would.
What do you think about the oncoming of StarCraft Remastered? Blizz just had a couple people down into California to get them to try out the game. The release date has just been announced. Is StarCraft Remastered something that you'll be playing a lot of? Do you think that maybe you'll not switch from StarCraft to go pro, but do you think that that's a game that you would like to play on a competitive level, perhaps a professional level?
I would definitely try it. And again, as I said, it's a bit similar to the RTS question earlier. If StarCraft Remastered would become the dominant game, more so than StarCraft 2, I would play it, no question asked. I really enjoy Brood War. Also enjoy StarCraft 2, but so whatever would be big out of the two, I would just play. And even if it's not becoming so big, which I think is the case, at least outside of Korea, I'll definitely give it a try. Because there was a lot of fun things you could do in Brood War that you can't do in StarCraft 2, and just out of nostalgia as well.
How far do you intend to take your career as a pro gamer in esports? Do you see like a coming end of your role as a pro gamer, and maybe you transition into something else? Like you spoke a little bit about having some management roles. Would you ever switch to another different non-RTS game, such as a MOBA or anything like that?
I don't know. You know, it's like I'm not thinking too far ahead in the future. The most important thing to me is that I retain my freedom. I don't want to get a 9 to 5. I think that's the main thing for me. I want to be my own boss, even if I'm not entirely my own boss. But I want to be able to shape my day mostly the way I want to, and because I've grown to really love that lifestyle and not having to, always report to a direct superior if I want to do something or something. So that's what matters most to me, and I'll pursue whatever I can that allows me to do that. And right now that's StarCraft, and who knows what that's going to be in the future, but that's the main point.
Would you ever switch to something kind of parallel in general gaming, not really with esports? Like, if there was no big RTS game, do you think you could go full-time streamer?
I don't know if I could go full-time streamer, because even though I have extroverted periods, and I do enjoy being at events and hanging out with a lot of people. It's still an activity that is overall draining to me, and something that I don't feel like doing every day. And as a streamer, as a full-time streamer, I think you need a lot of consistency. And I feel like I'd have too many days that I don't want to spend with other people, even if it's indirectly. Maybe that's a path, but I could imagine it being difficult for me. I think, if anything, it would be more of a streamer / YouTuber mix, because like making content, it's on your own terms. You don't have to spend time directly with other people. So maybe something more in that direction. But as I said, I'll take it as it comes.
Do you have any advice for the people who are trying to rise up through esports right now? Pro players, streamers, anyone at all?
You know, it's always tough giving advice. I think the most important thing is to not force an issue. I feel like it's something that just kind of needs to come naturally. So if it's something like something you go from amateur to pro, not because you decided as a career path, but you do it and it turns out it works, and then you decide to go pro once you realize this is something I can actually do. But don't be discouraged. Like, there's nothing wrong with also realizing this is not working out. And I know that's kind of depressing advice to give, but I think it's also an important one, because this is still not like it's not a stable career path. And it's good also, like, it's also fine to try it, and you can take something away from it even if you fail. But realizing that failure is definitely an option is important. And that doesn't mean you don't grow as a person if you don't succeed. But that's the most important thing, that you keep growing as a person while pursuing it. And that's, I think it's a good advice that I got from one of my, if I want to call it that way, idol, Chris Hadfield, the Canadian astronaut. He described it in his book as his dream since childhood was to become an astronaut. But he was always aware that it's very unlikely, right? It's something almost nobody can get to do. But his goal was always to work towards becoming an astronaut, while knowing that it's probably not going to happen. But as long as he keeps, educating himself and training himself in a way that he could be one, if he's lucky, then he's going to be on a good path. And I think that's good general advice whenever you're pursuing something that is not too likely to work out, but could. But as long as you're growing as a person, it's, the path is kind of the goal.
So that's pretty much all I had. Question-wise, is there anything that you wanted to say? Any final thoughts, any words, anything like that?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me. I had a good time. And, also feels good. There's not so many content creators in Starcraft sometimes. And so I'm just very grateful you're doing this. And I was had a good time being on your show.
Well, thanks so much, man. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and it was a real nice thing for you to give me so much of your time and come on and have this discussion, and hopefully run out into the wild, run into each other at some point at some event, eventually, fingers crossed.
I'm sure.